This is the blueprint to making your first $1 million. I'm gonna walk you through it step by step, even if you're starting with your first dollar. Now, there's 3 levels to the blueprint. The first level is personal development. And inside of personal development, there is knowledge, skills, motivation, and environment. And 1 out of 9 Americans are a millionaire, and the reason for that comes down to knowledge. And if you're wondering, who are you to say this? My name is Tanner Chidester. I've generated over $115 million in under 6 years. I also own 3 tech companies, and every business I've ever started has at least generated multi-7 figures per year. Now, no one in my family had ever been a business owner before or an entrepreneur, so I thought that the only way that I could make money was to go to school and get good grades and get a degree. But when college athletics ended for me and I realized I really hated doing what I was doing, which was studying petroleum engineering, I had lunch with one of my mentors named David Fry, who was a family friend. And as we sat down, he asked me, Tanner, what are your goals? What do you want to do? And I just remember saying, I want to make a shitload of money. And he started to show me that there were different ways that I could make money that I never knew existed. My eyes opened and I was open to the opportunity to start doing that. Next are the skills you have, and these are the things you do. Now, some people claim that they have a certain trait, but really a trait is a bundle of skills put together. For example, if you want to learn sales, you would need to learn how to actively listen, keep good eye contact, have proper body language, learn objection handling. And if someone has all those skills, they would even then say they're good at sales. But then if you wanted to level up, you could learn marketing. But then to learn marketing, you would have to understand paid ads and writing copy and social media. And you'd also have to learn websites. And then if you understand sales and marketing, you can now actually acquire customers and run a business. And as you earn more skills, you become much more valuable. And the more you learn, the more you get. The next step is then to get motivated. For example, if you're motivated to eat, it's because you're hungry. If you're motivated to sleep, it's because you're tired. If you're motivated to be a millionaire, it's because you aren't one yet. Motivation comes from deprivation. And an easy way to become motivated financially is simply to surround yourself around people who make more money than you. And if you don't know anyone yet who does, then at the very least, create a reference point you can aspire to be like. For example, I look up to guys like Gary Vee, Andy Frisella, and Ed Mylett. And these guys are people I aspire to be like who feel within reach. Now, when I started my business, no one besides my mentor thought it was going to work. My girlfriend at the time broke up with me because of it. Her mom thought I was stupid. My family thought I was stupid. And to be honest with you, I thought maybe I was stupid because no one had ever done this before in my family. And I didn't know anyone who'd actually had success before. But what it taught me as I started to learn through my mentor and I was pushing towards building this business is that I had to decide that I wanted to be successful more than I cared about other people's approval. And this is the perfect segue into environment. Think about your environment as a lubricant, or it could be friction for your goals. If you want to change someone's behavior, you have to change their environment. For example, if I wanted a group of people to lick the floor, first I could lock all the doors in the room and say they couldn't leave until they did. And next I could withhold water and food. And third, I could even offer $10,000 of cash. All I had to do was to change their environment to get them to do what I wanted. So the purpose of your environment is how do you make it as easy as possible to work as hard as you can? And then how do I eliminate everything else that distracts me from my goals? Or to be more specific, how do I get rid of doing all the stuff that distracts me from learning the skills that take me to my goals? And if you're unsure, put everything through a filter of, does this take me closer to my goals or further away? And once you cut out all the things that are taking you further away, you will only be left with your focus on the things that take you closer to your goals, and then you only do that. When I made the commitment to start my business, what I did is I moved home, I stopped dating, I stopped seeing any friends, I didn't party, I didn't drink, I didn't go to any social gatherings. I just locked myself in a 300 square foot room in my parents' house, and I worked from 16 to 18 hours a day, would go to sleep, and then get up and do it all over again. And the reason I did that is at the time, I was so sick and tired of being broke and being poor that I was willing to do anything and cut out everything else until I could prove to myself that I could actually make money and start building some level of success. And if you're sitting here wondering, hey, Tanner, that's not normal. Well, yeah. You want to be a millionaire and that's not normal. You can't expect to do what everyone else does and then get different results. So we just discovered who you are and went through some personal development, and you're starting to make a little bit more money. The next step is figuring out who to sell to, and this is the second phase of hitting 1 million. Now, most people think that they want to sell a $50 item to 2,000 people versus selling a $15,000 item to 67 people, when in reality, this is actually easier to sell. And not only that, the cool part is if you were selling a $15,000 item, you can split it up so you don't have to be all up front at once. So for example, I could sell a $15,000 service that lasts 12 months and they pay $12.50 per month. Now there's 3 types of people you can sell to. Someone with pain who is like you, someone you share a passion with, or someone who needs professional skills you have. And then you want to start with the smallest group of people you can help that you can charge the most money for before you try to move down market. So for example, when I was trying to come up with my first business, I looked at the skills I had. When I was 12 years old, I started getting into weightlifting. I started running. I started doing sports. And until I was about 22 years old, that's pretty much my entire life. And I did nutrition and training, and I hired a bunch of coaches. So I had a lot of skills in fitness, you could say. Other things I studied was petroleum engineering. So that was what I studied in high school. I also knew how to play the piano. I also knew how to do keyboard typing. So that was something I learned in seventh grade, where I could type about 100 words a minute, I believe. It was pretty fast. And so I started looking at all the skills I had. Now, what I finally settled on was fitness, and that's what my mentor thought I should start with, because I had done so much in my athletic career and in the fitness realm that we felt that that was where I had the most experience and where I had the most authority to start trying to build my business. But if I hadn't wanted to do fitness, I could have looked at maybe other things I'd done. Also, I'd done door-to-door sales. So maybe I could have taught sales. Maybe I could have taught someone how to do keyboard typing. Hypothetically, I had pretty good grades on my ACT and my SAT. So maybe I could have done SAT prep. And when it's all summed down, in reality, the thing you want to pick is where you can provide the most value to. So for me, because I've been in athletics and sports and fitness for the last 10-ish years, we felt that fitness was going to be the easiest way for me to help people and where I could provide the most value to them. And if you're unsure who to help, pick the person you can provide the most value to. The better you can help them, the easier it will be to sell. And then next, make sure they have these 3 things so you know can help them. First, they have a big problem you can solve. Second is they have money to spend. You can't sell to someone who doesn't have money. And third, there's urgency. They want to fix it now. But again, if you had to boil this all down into one thing, it's basically helping the person you can provide the absolute most value to. And for me, that's why I chose fitness, because I'd been in fitness at that point my whole life. I've been a 2-sport athlete, and so I knew that market fairly well and the struggles people would be going through to get in shape. Now, we've covered who you are and who you're going to sell to, and now you've made a little bit more money. Now we talk about what to sell. And I want 4 elements in the products I want to sell. You want it to be unique. So the more unique the product is, the less competition. So for example, when I was selling fitness, it's not really that unique. It doesn't always have to hit all 4 of these, but the closer you get to hitting all 4, the better it's going to be. You want it to be expensive, so you can sell it for a high price. It's just an easier way to grow your businesses. You want it to be sticky. And then finally, you want it to be cheap to deliver. And then you have to think about how easy or hard it is to scale. So on this side, we'll have easy. And on this side, we will have hard. For example, if you sell protein bars, it costs almost nothing to add a new customer, so it's very easy to scale. If you sell ads like Facebook, it costs almost nothing to have an additional customer, so again, it's very easy to scale. If you sell a book, it costs almost nothing to bring on a customer, so again, very easy to scale. But if you run one of the businesses I have with consulting, it costs a lot to bring on an additional customer compared to these other businesses, and it's harder to scale because of expertise. But the caveat you want to understand is that usually businesses that are easier to scale take a lot more capital up front, or are usually harder to get a customer. Less scalable businesses over here, the hard ones, have the inverse problem where it's usually easier to get a customer, but it's harder to deliver quality. So think law firms or accounting or consulting, where it takes a lot of expertise from your team to help clients, but it's actually fairly easy to get a customer because so many people need help with those things. And now we move on to level 2, where we have to start getting them to buy. So 2 things need to occur here for us to be successful. First, they find out about you, and then second, we get them to buy. Now, you have 4 ways they find out about you. The first is what I call warm outreach. The second will be cold outreach. The third will be content. And then we have paid ads. But if we really break it down, it's really 2 ways. We have organic, which is going to be these right here, or we have paid ads, which obviously is going to be paid. Now, here are some of the numbers you want to look for if you're starting to do lead generation. So let's pretend we're doing warm outreach. Now, let's define warm outreach as anyone who is following you on your social media pages. So let's say you send 100 DMs a day, right? That's just a good number, right? The rule of 100 is a good number to start building your business. And usually we'll say 20 an hour so you don't get a spam block. All right. Meaning if you've ever gone on Instagram or Facebook and you just start sending people a million messages, they will start limiting how many messages you do typically if you go over that, right? Because they're trying to limit spam on their platforms. So if I send 100 DMs, usually I want about a 30% response rate. So meaning I will get 30 people who respond. And if I'm good at booking sales calls, from that number, I'm going to try to get at least 5 calls booked. And in a perfect scenario, from that, maybe I get 1 to 2 sales calls closed. These would be the typical numbers you'd look for in warm outreach. Now, the cool part about this is if you're selling a $3,000 product, okay, and let's say you made 1 sale and you did 100 DMs a day at 20 an hour, that would take you plus the sales call. We'll add these sales calls in. So 5 hours here for the DMs. You do 5 hours here for the sales calls. And so you would do 3,000 divided by 10, you are making $300 an hour. And that's why selling stuff at a higher price is more beneficial, because you can put in a lot of effort, but you get paid handsomely for that effort. Most of you probably are not making $300 an hour. And so when you look at this scenario, it makes a lot of sense to do that as long as you can close 1 or maybe 2 deals. Now, if we go to cold outreach is a little bit harder, meaning these are people who don't follow you. So it's an absolute stranger. So you're reaching out to them. They have no idea who you are. They're wondering why you're reaching out to them in the first place. So it makes it a little bit harder. So if we take that same scenario where we do 100 DMs at 20 an hour, and then we would get usually a 10% response rate. So it's going to be much lower. So I would have to send 100 DMs, but I might only get 10 people to respond. Could be as high as 20%, but typically I would say 10 because I like to get lower numbers for people's expectations rather than higher numbers. And let's say you book 3 calls and maybe you close 1. Maybe you don't even close 1. Maybe you'd have to do 300 DMs to close 1 deal. And so if you have these expectations, however, then it makes it easy to win, because a lot of times when I see people struggle in business, they don't know what these numbers should be. They just, they'll hear people saying, here's what you should do, here's what you should do, but they don't know if they're doing a good job or not because they don't know what numbers to expect. If you were doing this, these are going to be great numbers, and you can make a lot of money even if you're reaching out to strangers. In fact, I was doing around $50,000 a month between cold outreach and warm outreach before I ever ran any type of paid ads. The next thing is content. I'm not going to go really deep into content, but what I will say is I think posting content is good so that people who are on your page can see if what you have to sell is relevant to them. But trying to post content with the hope of going viral, I don't think is a great strategy. You have what I consider content creators who are great at content but don't understand business. And then you have business owners who are really good at running a business, but they don't usually go as viral. I would rather be a business owner and figure content out later than try to be a creator and then figure out business. It's much easier for me to bring value to the marketplace as a business owner than it is as a content creator, because that's all they can actually do. The fourth thing then is paid ads. Now with paid ads, the numbers you can expect are going to partially depend on what you're selling, but I'll give you 2 different scenarios. Either you're selling something that's considered B2C. B2C would be a consumer. So if you're selling shoes or sneakers or protein bars, it's straight to the consumer. Or you're selling something that's B2B, which is obviously to the business. And so numbers for this would usually be in the same range, where if you spend $1,000 on ads, for B2C, usually you'll get $10 leads. B2B, you might get $20 leads, all right? Because there's less business owners than there are consumers. And if I had $1,000 at $10 leads, that would mean I get 100 leads total. And then in business, usually what you'll see is what we call the law of 10. And I'll show you that. So here you would have 50 leads. Okay. And then you're going to have the law of 10. So typically, if out of 100 leads, if you can get 10% of those people to book a call, that is a good metric. Here, you'd have 5 people book a call. And then usually you want at least 10% of those calls to close. So here you'd have 1 close, and over here you might have 0, right? 0 to 1, because we probably would have to spend another $1,000. Now, with B2C, usually it's a lower price point. So this might be $2,000 product or $3,000 product. With B2B, it might be $5,000 or $6,000 product. But again, the reason I'm showing this to you is so you know what numbers to expect. Half the time when I'm working with one of my clients and I'm helping consult on their business, they don't know what the metrics should be for their business, so they get very stressed and overwhelmed, not knowing if they're doing a good or bad job. If you go through this part of the video and you have these numbers written down, then if you're within KPI, you know you're doing a great job. If you're not within KPI, then you should know what you need to fix. So now that they know about our stuff, now we have to get them to buy. And if you don't learn sales, business is going to be really tough for you. I remember my first 2 years, I made $2,000 total and just didn't have a clue how sales worked. Then I went and did door-to-door sales, and the very next year in my business, I made $1 million. But it wasn't until I had to learn how to transfer this knowledge to my team that I had to come up with a repeatable framework that they could follow so it would become a repeatable process. And I want to show you what that is on the board. Here's the acronyms. It's I, D, S, P, O, C, C, O. Okay? This obviously is not a very beautiful acronym, but this is how you can remember what to do. So when we start, we want to do what we call an intro. You can also call this a pre-frame. All you want to do on this is set expectations for the call. The reason this is important is in any situation, if you set expectations for what is supposed to happen, nobody is going to be surprised or expect anything different. So if I get on a sales call and say, look, the point of this call is to figure out what your goals are, what you're struggling with, and what you've tried. By the end, if you feel it's a fit, we're going to look for a yes, you can work with us, or you can say, no, you don't want to work with us. Whatever you decide to do is fine, but the point of the call is by the end you feel confident in one of those two things. Does that sound fair? So now they know it's like, okay, we're going to go through this call, and by the end, you're expecting me to do one of these two things. You can do an intro however you want, but for me, I like to lay out what I'm going to do on the call so they know what to expect, and then hopefully by the end they give a yes or no decision. The next thing is going to be discovery. Now in discovery, this is where we're going to start asking questions. What's your goal? What are you struggling with? What have you tried? Have you ever had a coach before? Have you ever done any programs? Whatever it is we're selling. There's really 3 key things that we want to do inside of discovery to get them to make a decision today. The first is opportunity cost. So especially when I'm selling business consulting, I'll say, look, how long have you been stuck at this problem? 6 months. Okay. And if you fixed it, you probably would have made an extra $20,000 a month, right? So far you've lost out on $120,000 by not making a decision. Is that accurate? To get them to understand that I want them to make a decision today because by delaying making a decision, they've already lost a ton of money. The other thing that I want to do is make sure that they're willing to move forward ASAP. So I want to ask questions around, hey, so as long as you feel this is a fit, there's no reason you wouldn't move forward today, right? Like you want to fix this problem. It's super important to you. It's on the top of your priority list. Whatever questions you want to have around that. So once we have made them come up with a number for opportunity cost, which is really important because a lot of times prospects will think by not making a decision, they're not losing anything, when in reality, they're losing a lot. And then that they're going to move forward today, we can move towards the next frame. The frame is a summary. And so what I do here is I will say, look, just to be clear, your goal is this, you're struggling with this, you've tried this, and as long as we can show you that we can get you results and make this much money, you're going to move forward on the calls. That all sound accurate? And I basically just re-summarize everything we just went through and get them to confirm that that is correct and I didn't miss anything. After that, we're going to go into what we call the pillars. Now, I've done this in a few different videos. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it, but what the pillars is what are the 3 main reasons that someone should work with you? So in this case, let's say you're selling consulting, right? What are the 3 main reasons that someone should work with you? Let's say in this case, in most businesses, a big thing that they deal with is offers, right? And so we would want to take a they versus we frame, meaning, all right, so the first thing we're going to fix is your offer. And what most people do is this, that's terrible. And what we do is this, that's amazing. And that's why you should work with us. The second thing could probably be something around lead generation. All right. And if you don't know what the main things are that your avatar struggles with, go talk to different competitors, go talk to, go in different Facebook groups, go on social media. Like usually most businesses have the same issues. In my case, usually it's an offer and lead generation issue almost every time. So I would take the same frame. Most people get leads this way, which is dumb. We get leads this way, which is smart, right? And I'm pushing myself as far away from everyone else as possible so I can charge a high price. And then finally, I usually will do something about me. If other companies help with offers and other companies help with lead gen, why would I still be the best choice? Well, I've done $115 million in sales. So that means that I'm probably smarter than someone who's done less, right? So you use something of authority that you could use. One of my buddies has sold his company for around 50 million. He could say, I've sold a company for 50 million. That's why you should listen to me. So the pillars is going to be around 2 things usually that are the biggest needle drivers or movers for that business. And then the third one would be something about yourself. Then we move over to what we call the overview. The overview should be 5 minutes or less of what they're actually going to get tangibly inside your program. So this could be, hey, you're going to get, X amount of one-on-one calls, you're going to get a school group, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. It's just very briefly so that they can tangibly understand what they're going to get. Most people don't care what they're going to get, but I just noticed that if I don't at least explain it briefly, that it makes it harder for me to close because they want at least a little bit of an understanding of the deliverables. After that, we're going to go into creating certainty. Certainty, we want to get people as close to 100% as possible that this is going to be the right decision for them. If you ask someone, hey, now that you've heard everything, how do you feel? And they go, sounds pretty good. That means they're not 100% certain. If I say, hey, now that you've heard everything, how does it sound? And they say, yeah, it sounds amazing. Like, how do I sign up? That is close to 100% certainty. We can't always get people to 100%, but we want to get them as close to it as humanly possible. Then we close. So that's just saying, hey, the price of the program is $10,000 or whatever the price is. And then we handle objections. And the only 4 objections you're ever going to get, if you've qualified properly, is price, spouse or business partner, time, so they need to think about it, or belief. And then once they close, you want to reinforce their decision. And the 3 things that I've seen make the biggest difference is you send a personalized video. So I'll send a video to a client that says, hey, super excited you just joined the program. As you come in, just really work hard. We're going to be the shovel, so to speak, and you just have to dig the hole. So it'll be difficult, but as long as you use the tools and processes and resources we give you, you're going to get great results. Then we have a very quick onboarding, usually within 24 hours if possible. And then the final thing would be to book their next call so that they feel like we know what we're doing and that we have a very good fulfillment process in place. So now that we've gone through the sales process, we have to get them to buy more times. Now there's really 8 ways we can do this. First is we can increase the price. So if we're selling something for $1,000, now we charge $2,000. Number 2 is we could decrease the cost. So let's say I'm selling a shoe for $5 and I use a different manufacturer and I'm selling it for $3. We can also get them to buy more times, meaning that if it was a protein powder or maybe it's protein bar, we could put them on a subscription so they're buying more often. Another thing could be buying more quantity. So especially in wholesaling, you can see this where, if it's you buy 100, it's going to be at $20 per pallet, let's say, but if you buy 1,000, it'll be at $15 per pallet. So you get more quantity. You can also get them to buy something else. So something I do inside my businesses is we are a done with you consulting business, but a lot of people need setters, closers, ads. And so we actually can sell them done for you services over here that they need in addition. So that actually increases our LTV and our ROI. Number 6 is increase the quality. So increasing the quality of the service so that you get more people to buy, maybe more word of mouth. You could decrease the quantity. So maybe you put limit on supply and demand. So you can actually charge more because there's only so much quantity. Or finally, you can actually lower the quality where maybe you could sell more, but it's not as high of a quality service. Now, ultimately, all of these can work, but what I've seen work the absolute best and is the easiest thing to do to grow your business is simply just focusing on increasing the price. Because if all things stay equal and you increase the price, you're going to make more money with doing little to no extra work. And so a rule of thumb that I had for this is I actually started selling my services at $1,500. And then every time I would make, give or take 3 to 5 sales, I would raise it by at least 20%. When I started with my fitness business, I first sold it at $1,500, then I sold it at $2,000, then I sold it at $2,400, then I sold it at $2,800, then I sold it at $3,200, and so on and so forth. So I just kept raising my price until I started seeing that the price I was saying I was getting a lot more no's than yeses, and that's where I settled on $3,200 for about 4 months. For my fitness packages was about $800 a month. And so every time you make a sale, every 3 sales or so, you could try to increase your price by about 20% until you start getting more objections on price than you get yeses like you were before. Now we need to scale, so you're going to need help. And your business growth will be limited by the cumulative knowledge of everyone in the business combined. When you start out, you may be the only brain in the business and have a bunch of doers, but as you grow the business, you're going to be limited by how many good people you have. So the most valuable skill you can have as an owner is to get someone to do something for you. You can be horrible at literally every other skill as long as you get someone to do something for you. Now, usually this won't work because you have to at least have some skills to get the business off the ground and earn money so that you can pay people, but you get the point. So what I want to do now is walk you guys through how I would try to hire someone and then what I say on the interview process to make sure you get good talent. So first thing that I like to do is make sure that we have some type of application. All right. Now on the application, you're going to want to have questions that ensures that they have a lot of experience around the position you're trying to hire. So let's say you're trying to hire a business coach, right? Now, if you were hiring someone, or let's say I was hiring someone who was going to be an account manager or a business coach for my clients, what skills would they probably need to have? Well, you start thinking about all the things you need to know in a business. So are they a prior business owner? That might be a good thing to ask on the application. Are they a prior business owner? Do they know how to run ads? Have they done sales before, and what kinds of sales? Do they know how to build funnels? Do they know text and automations? What type of clients have they worked with before? You know, if I'm in the high ticket industry, have they worked with high ticket clients, or are they working with clients over at McKinney, right? Which is completely different. They're a lot bigger companies. I want to have all kinds of questions that immediately on paper will tell me probably they have enough experience to help. If I'm looking to hire a business coach in this case, and they haven't been a business owner, and they don't know ads very well, and they've never done sales, and they do know funnels a little bit, that's not going to be someone I want to move through the hiring process. So the key thing is when you're hiring, make sure you have an application that weeds out extremely aggressively the people who are going to be the best fit. So once they've been weeded out in the application, we will set up an interview, and usually I'll have someone on my team do the initial interview. Now there's a 9-step process that we go through that I want to walk you through. So the first thing is we start off by saying what our values are and what we do. Keep in mind, you don't want to just get everyone to like you. You almost want to scare them away. Meaning, I say, look, this is what our company stands for. We're all about proactivity. We're all about competitive greatness. We want people who work really hard. If you don't like to work hard, this probably won't be for you. Don't feel bad about having standards in your company, because if you don't hold people to the standard, your company is going to fall to the lowest person, right? The weakest link in your company is usually where your company defaults to. So you want to have very high standards that you hold people accountable to. Number 2 is then, what's this role and the problem it solves? So here is the role. And here's what a day looks like. And I'll go through an actual day. So you'll get up at 8 a.m. You'll do this. We have team meeting at this time. Here's how you're going to interact with the clients. Really make sure they understand what a typical day looks like. Because again, if they don't like it, you don't want to bring them on board and waste your time training and doing SOPs and all this stuff and then just ending up having them leave later. Number 3 is then I ask for experience, but I ask for it in a very specific way. I don't say, you know, have you done ads? Have you done this? I say, tell me what your last positions were. You know, if they had multiple jobs, I say, tell me what position you had and then what you did in a typical day. And the reason I ask that is because if they go through and they haven't had experience in running ads, they haven't had experience in sales, they haven't had experience in fulfillment, all those types of things, then they're not going to be a good fit for this position. If I just go through and say, hey, have you ran ads? Have you done sales? Have you done that? Most people know that you're looking for them to say yes, and so you don't actually get good insight. But if I know what they did in their previous job, then I know if they're going to be a fit for this position without them knowing what answer I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for someone who's done ads and funnels and all this stuff, if they say, yeah, my last job, here's what I did in a day, and none of those things get brought up, then I know that they're not going to be a good fit. The next thing is I'll ask, what does success look like to you? Meaning, if you work for the best company in the world, what does that look like? Why are they the best company in the world? I don't care what their answer is here. I'm just looking to see what drives and motivates them. So the only answer I really don't like is if someone says I like a lot of time off, because ultimately that's not what I'm trying to hire someone for. I want to have someone who comes in and wants to work hard and really push the business forward. Number 5 is then I'll give some type of stress test. So if it's a media buyer, I'll give them a hypothetical situation and say, what type of ad would you run? What type of headline? What type of funnel? If this is a sales rep, I might give them a practice sales call and say, record it. Here's our script. Send me back the recording with very little training, because I'm trying to gauge what level they're at as their baseline. What you want to look for is you want to hire 7s and move them to 10s. What most people do is they hire 3s and then push them to 7s, and then they get mad that their company isn't very good because they hired a lot of low-level people thinking they were going to get them to a higher number. It's a lot easier to hire a better person and then train them versus getting a lower-level person, and then with a lot of training, make them average. You want to find 7s and move them to 10s. The next thing is just making sure their goals align with the company, right? So what you can always expect people to do is do what's in their best self-interest. So if you can align what their goals are with your company's goals, that's where you're going to get the best ROI and you're going to have the least amount of problems. For example, if you're bringing someone into your company and there's no way for them to make more money or ascend, and they say, yeah, in 5 years I want to be the CEO, that's not going to be a great hire, because ultimately they're not going to get what they want, so they're going to leave. Making sure their goals fit inside your business is the best way to get people to stick around. Number 7 is then I'll ask how much money would they like to make. The reason I like to ask this is, one, if they say a higher number than what I'm looking to give, I can reset their expectations and see if they're willing to go down. If they say a lower number, then I either can save that money or I can put that money into a bonus structure that they can earn by hitting certain metrics or KPIs. Number 8 is then I'll ask, what does work from home mean for you? For me, work from home means they're working from home. It doesn't mean they just work whenever they want. So based on how they define this, plays a role in if I'm going to hire them or not. And then the last thing is if the CEO didn't do this initial interview, make sure the CEO does. A big mistake I made is I would allow people in my company to hire people when they didn't have the same insight and experience I had. So now I don't hire any single person in my company unless they've been signed off by me. Now, once you've hired them, if they're still not performing at the level you need them to, then there's really only 5 reasons why they wouldn't be doing that. So reason number 1 would be that they didn't know. And we'll talk about how to fix these later. So reason number 1 could be that they didn't know. Reason number 2 could be that they don't know how. Reason 3 could be they didn't know when you wanted it by. Reason 4 would be they don't have motivation to do it. Lack of, so we'll just say lack of motivation. And then reason 5 is there's a block. If they didn't know, that just means we need to have a fix in communication, right? So they didn't know they were supposed to do something. It just means you need to be more clear, have a standard operating procedure sheet, or just obviously talk to them. Make sure that they know that they wanted to do it. If they don't know how, then that's going to be an SOP sheet, okay? And on the SOP sheets that I have, what I like to do is I will have the task. Then underneath that, I will have a video. Then I will have step-by-step instructions. So step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. And then I will have a resource tab. So if there's any links or resources they need, it's all right there on that SOP sheet. Number 3 is they didn't know when you wanted it by, you just need to make a deadline. All right, so if you need something really fast, you say, hey, I need this within 48 hours. I need this within 24 hours versus, hey, do this and just tell me when you're done. Try to set deadlines. Number 4 is if they don't have motivation to do it, then you need to tie this back to how this benefits the company. What I found is that if I have team members who are not motivated to do their job, sometimes they don't think it's important or they don't think it's relevant to helping the company grow. And so I'll actually have to go in and show them that, hey, by you doing this for the company, this is how it helps us grow and this is why it's important. And we need someone like you to do this important task. Now, if it's not one of those 4 things, the only other thing it could be is what I call a block. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes I'll go to my editing team and I'll say, hey, why are these videos taking so long, right? And my video manager trying to do a good job would just say, oh, you know, like we just have this and this and this and da-da-da. And ultimately, after we have a conversation, I find out that what I'm asking them to do doesn't work with the size team we have. So we would either need more team members or they would need more time or whatnot. And so sometimes what happens is that there's an actual block for them to do the task that you want them to do. And that really usually comes down to good communication from the manager, where if I'm asking them to do something that's not feasible, the manager has to come back and say, hey, look, if that's what you want, that's fine, but we'll either need more team members or we're going to need more time or we're going to need faster Wi-Fi or whatever the bottleneck is. So that's called a block. This happens every once in a while, usually when you have a manager who's really trying to go above and beyond and impress you, but they're not telling you why what you're asking them for is unrealistic. And so this is called a block. And so all you have to do usually is remove that block. And as a CEO, you can decide if that block is worth it. Someone might come to me and say, hey, we need 6 more video guys. That's going to cost an extra 20 grand a month. And I might say, that's not worth the 20 grand a month. But at least now I know that if they can't hit what I'm asking for, it's because I didn't want to add the 6 more team members or give them more time or whatever it may be. All right, so the next thing is then just understanding the 3 pillars that you need in your business. The first thing we're going to want is acquisition. Okay, acquisition is a vital part to every business. The second part is going to be delivery, so actually delivering on the product. And the third part is going to be operations. Now, as your business scales, it's important that these things all grow together as close as humanly possible. Because, for example, if you have a really good acquisition team, but they're doing terrible delivery, that's going to affect how fast your company can grow, because as you're adding more customers, you're getting a lot of complaints, a lot of refund requests, etc. If you're scaling delivery, right, your delivery is really good, but you can't get any customers, that's also an issue. Or if you have really good acquisition and really good delivery, but you have poor operations, so you have poor team management, hiring, training, SOPs, this in the grand scheme is going to have a big issue as well, because as the delivery and acquisition scales, you have poor operations. So things are getting done lackadaisically, or they're not getting done on time. So as you're scaling your company, these are the three things you have. Now, as a CEO, you really can only focus on one thing. Now, in the beginning, you might do everything, but let's just say the number is $100,000 a month. You're going to need someone who handles delivery. So we'll draw a little stick figure here. And you're going to need someone who handles operations. So we're going to draw a little stick figure here. So in my company, usually the thing I'm focusing on the most is acquisition. I think it's the most important, and I'm one of the best there is at it. Delivery, I'll have someone else over that. And then operations, I'll have someone else over that. Now, again, if you're below $100,000 a month, maybe even under $300,000 a month, you can get away with doing all of this at once, but at some point, as the business scales, you're going to have someone who's in charge 100% of delivery and someone who's 100% in charge of operations, or vice versa, depending on what you're in charge of. So now it's time to go to level 3, but before we do, if you need any help with scaling your business, getting leads, sales, operations, delivery, just check out the links in the description below, book a call. We'd be happy to help you. Now, to keep your advantage, you need leverage. Now, there's really only 2 ways to get leverage. The first one is branding. And then the second one is people. Now, when I say branding, I mean you get a lot of organic traffic. You're very well known, people really like you, and even if you didn't run ads, you would get a lot of people who would find you on social media or find out about your services. Now, the reason this is important is it improves a lot of metrics across the board. You'll have, higher CTRs, you'll have higher conversion rates, you'll have more buyers, etc. Now, I'll be straight with you. This is one of the hardest things to do. It takes a lot of time typically, and or an epic story. So one of my friends, I'm not going to mention them, but they sold their company around $50 million. And after he sold his company for $50 million, everything seemed to grow exponentially for him. And when I've asked him about why he feels he grew so fast, that's one of the main things he said. The other way you can do it is people. And everyone who's watching this can definitely relate to people. So having people in place to create more leverage. The easiest way to think about leverage is if this was a seesaw, right? I don't know if this is how you draw a seesaw, but if I put a little person here and this is a little seesaw, leverage is going to be indicative of how much work you can do and still get a benefit. So for example, if on the seesaw I moved over here suddenly, it would be a lot harder to get this person to move because I have less leverage. But if I move it back here, I have a lot more leverage. The reason I'm showing this as an example is if you have branding, or you have people, what you're able to do in terms of the seesaw is you're able to do a lot more work and get a lot more benefit. And that's where a lot of people fail in business is they don't have any people and they don't have branding, therefore they don't have any leverage. So in terms of work, it's leverage times volume, which equals output. So the more leverage you can have either from people or branding times how much work you do is indicative of how much money your business can make and how quickly it makes it. Now, the next part is to stick with it. In my first 2 years of business, I only made $2,000 total, and I was working around 16 hours a day. It was that much work. I don't know why I was so bad at business. I almost quit 5 times, but I didn't. I stuck with it. And because I stuck with it, over the next 6 years, I did over 115 million, which means my opportunity cost, if I had quit and gone back to school and got a $100,000 a year job as an engineer, that I would have lost out on $114.4 million. That's what most people never think of. And my life would be completely different. Now, as you're trying to build your business, I'll take you through the steps. You have first what they call uninformed optimism. So we'll just call it UO. So uninformed optimism, meaning you don't know what you don't know, so you're really optimistic that things are going to go well in your business. Number 2 is then what I call IP, informed pessimism. So as you start going through and building your business, during those 2 years, I started to realize, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. Number 3, and this is where I almost quit, was what you call the valley of death. And this is where I said, this isn't worth it. I think I'm going to quit and die and just go back to school. But because I pushed through and I finally started having some success, I finally turned into informed optimism. I said, hey, I actually am getting some success. This is hard, but it's definitely worth it if I stick with it. And then finally, you can achieve the goal, right? So we'll just say AG. if you're on this journey, you have to understand that you have to push all the way through uninformed optimism, informed pessimism, and then the valley of death. Most people, once they get to the valley of death, they switch to the new business, right? So these are all new businesses over here. We'll call this MB. And so they just continue to go through this cycle thinking that it's the wrong business, when in reality, they just have to push through phases 1 through 3 and get to informed optimism and continue building the business. Every business you build is going to have upsides, downsides. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. If I had quit and gone back to school and not pushed through number 3, my life would be completely different. And if I ever went back and started another business, I would have had to go through these 3 phases again. So the key thing is, as you're going through this, make sure you go through those 3 phases so you can get to number 4 and then move on to number 5 where you actually can achieve the goal. And the best part is this: it doesn't matter if you achieve the goal. Either you get the outcome you want or you will personally develop as a person. Regret does not come from lack of achievement. It comes from lack of effort. And if you put in the effort, you'll either get the goal or you'll develop into the person you want to become. So it's a win either way. Now, most people will get stuck where they don't push through the valley of death, but the next thing people do is they start to diversify. And the reason they diversify is they've heard the saying that the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. Okay? What they forget to tell you is that most millionaires don't have other streams of income until after they're a millionaire. And so the average individual, what they'll do is they will have all these streams of income like this. I think that's 7. And so they have a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and they're putting in, 13% effort across the board. When in reality, what would be better is if they put 100% effort into one business and filled it all the way up. It's never a good idea to diversify because you're just putting a little bit of effort into each and every thing. The only time you want to start diversifying is where you have leverage, which we talked about earlier, where you have people who could go into these separate businesses or companies and run them. But when you're trying to get to your first million, the worst thing you could do is diversify. Put all your eggs in one basket and make sure that that thing works, and that's going to be the easiest way for you to scale. Now, the last step is just continue to get better and better. So one of the ways we can get better is simply do more volume. All right? There were 2 ways I did this in my career. The first was I knocked on 100 doors a day in door-to-door sales. Okay? 100 doors a day. It's about 8 hours a day. I would do 100 doors a day. I did it for 9 months. So I did 21,000 doors over 9 months. If you knocked on 21,000 doors over 9 months, I promise you, you would be a sales savage. There's no way that you wouldn't be. The other way I did that is I did 100 DMs a day when I went online. So that was 3,000 DMs a month. Again, if you do 3,000 DMs a month and you did that for a year, that's 36,000 DMs in 12 months. There's no way that you're going to suck if you continue to do that. The second thing is we don't want to sacrifice our goals. Okay? There's a saying, and I really love it. It says, either you sacrifice for your goals or your goals become the sacrifice. And this may sound extreme, but if you want crazy outcomes, you have to have outside sacrifices. I've done 100 plus million in sales, and now I want to sell a company for 9 figures, not because of the money, not because I need it, but because of who I want to become. Business for me is a vehicle for personal development, and that's why I stay in the game, and the game's to win in life, and you just have to keep playing to win. So that's how you get to your first million. If you want to see how I made 115 million selling coaching, you can click here.